All right, we are live. Another episode of Driving It Home with the Professor. On the line or online, I have Mr. Arias Garcia. For some of you that follow the local mixed martial arts scene in South Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, the greater tri-state area, you've heard of CFFC, Cage Fury Fighting Championships. In my estimation, it is probably from my dealings with them professionally, but also personally, one of the best organizations that I've dealt with how they treat their fighters, and dealing with specifically Arias. He's the main point person for matching up fights and that kind of thing. So without further ado, I have Arias Garcia. Arias, what should the fans, the hundreds or maybe 100 fans of this show, what should they know about you personally and professionally that makes this podcast important, that I'm talking to you?
Well, thank you for having me on. Like you said earlier, I am the matchmaker for CFFC. Personally, got 3 children, 12, 9, and 6. I work for a child protection agency during the day.
All right, so CFFC is, your matchmaking is as much a passion as it is a part-time job.
Correct.
Okay, all right, and even I could tell the people out there listening that as much as it might be a part-time job, Arias is very, you have a lot of access when you're dealing with Arias. So don't think that just because he's got a full-time gig, you can't get a hold of him. So getting down to brass tacks here, as I refer to my notes. How did you get involved with CFFC and ultimately become their matchmaker?
Well, before I became a matchmaker, I worked for, Miguel Arati. I helped him out with MFC, Euphoria, Bodog. Started writing for a couple websites. And then a friend said that Cage Fury was coming back. They asked if I wanted to be a part of it. Rob Haydak invited me to a meeting. He asked me basically what I wanted to do, and I told him I pretty much, paid my dues in the sport, on different sides of the business, and I would love to be a matchmaker. He took a chance on me, hired me, and it's history ever since.
All right, so you went to Rob. He had the position open. And what sold you on wanting to be the matchmaker for CFFC? What was that meeting like, and what was it for you that said, hey, you know what, CFFC is the organization that I want to be known for?
Just because I would have to say it had to be Rob's vision and his plan. He had a set plan on what he wanted to do year 1, what he wanted to accomplish year 2. And he treats me like he treats anyone else, and like the fighters, he treats them, with his heart on his sleeve. He's always straight up and honest with you. And after talking to him and his brother, and meeting him individually, it was a no-brainer. He was just a really nice guy, real smart. People don't know how smart he is business-wise, but he's very smart.
Yeah, CFFC isn't like that's not his only thing, right? I've probably met Rob, but I don't know him personally. But my understanding is he's an accomplished businessman.
Yeah, he is. He's got a couple other ventures that he's doing very well on, and he's got a passion about MMA, and it was evident the first time I met him.
All right, so the problem that we come across, myself as a trainer and someone that sometimes I'll help guys getting fights, is that you're dealing with, for lack of a better term, scumbags when it comes to promoters and matchmakers, and I say that with with a little bit tongue in cheek, but also with a decent amount of truth. But I've never gotten that feeling with you guys. It always seemed to be that number one, you guys want to make good fights, but number two, you want to make sure that the fighters understand that they're the commodity, and they're important to CFFC. Now, why do you think that's different in CFFC than, and we'll keep their name out of our mouths, but these other local organizations that are either run by scumbags or people that don't know what the heck they're doing?
Well, first of all, I respect any other promotion out there and any other matchmaker that's trying to make a business in MMA. Firsthand, Marco, it's not an easy business to get into or to make money. We try to treat people the way we want to be treated. We try to treat people like like the way the UFC treats fighters. We try to set them up for the bigger stage, and hopefully, while we're doing the right things, we become the bigger stage. But I think our show separates ourselves from other shows because first of all, our show is like an event. We have a great DJ, DJ Pete, and we have great fights and we have great fans. There's some fans that we've had since day one that have no connection to the fighter but just love our brand and love to come out and to see the fights. I think we have a great combination of great people working with us, great venues, and great fighters, and I think that's a combination that you got to have.
All right, so I mean, you guys. So it sounds like you guys are, really care about all aspects of it, not just the fighters, not just the fans, but everything. Making it in and knowing firsthand, being in the back. It's truly what's happening when when you're at a CFFC event, and not that I want to sound like I'm a commercial guy for the CFFC because I don't get anything out of it. I like having my fighters fight for you guys because I know I go to an event, it'll be like you got this guy with the jersey on the CFFC, or you're up in 2 minutes, you're here. It's kind of it's easy dealing with you guys from a trainer standpoint because, all right, this is what's going to be happening when, and you kind of guys are usually pretty good with being in that window. So you guys do a good job of also coordinating the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that the general public doesn't see, that I think helps have you keep fighters and keep fighters loyal to your brand. So
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go behind the scenes that people don't get to see. Like I said, we try to make it as professional as we can. We try to make it as smoothly run event as we can, and people like Chick Martinez, who's been with Cage Fury since day one, has
that's the husky Spanish guy, right?
that's a little Spanish guy. He's not the husky guy. He's skinny and small, but he's a good wrestler. So he'll probably beat my ass if I say something bad. But he's a great guy. And we like I say, we try to make everyone feel good from you, the trainer, to the manager, from the fighter's girlfriend or their wives or their father who's coming to see them. We try to make everyone feel appreciated, like we want them there, and we do.
And no, and it definitely comes across. Now you made mention of wanting to be like the UFC. Now you're probably one of the only local events that truly has become a de facto farm system for the UFC. You had one of your past titleists just win by impressive spinning back fist. You have Tim Williams, who's currently one of your champions, and so just so we know, I train and help train Tim Williams, but he was on The Ultimate Fighter. He's a current champion, and so I've mentioned in one of my other podcasts that I felt that you guys were almost like not to put CFFC down, but this is a definite compliment. That you guys are like a feeder system, a minor league for the UFC, and that's why I think, from my estimation, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, why you're able to get the level of talent that you get.
No, you're exactly right, Marco. In 2014, I think we sent 4 of our champions to the UFC right after they won our title. I think Charlie Brenneman went. Aljamain Sterling went, George Sullivan went, and then Paul Felder went. So we had 4 guys that won the title, and yeah, it's a selling point. When I'm trying to match fights up, I always point to the fact, and I say, listen, when you fight for Cage Fury, we do have a good relationship with the UFC, and if you win, there's a possibility that you might get the call, and we never held a fighter back anytime they wanted to go to the UFC. I'm glad you brought up Timmy Williams. Great guy. I couldn't be happier for him that he won the title. We had him set up for a main event, and the UFC came calling for the Ultimate Fighter, and we let him go. So we always want to make the fighter, feel like they have the best opportunity to either thrive under us or thrive under the UFC. And I think 2015, is going to be a big year for Cage Fury. And I think, it's a compliment that we're a feeder system, but I think, we might, if everything goes right, we might be stepping out on our own.
So let me ask you, as of right now, just even maybe somewhat personally, somewhat professionally, it's got to be tough when you see Paul Felder in the UFC, when you see Aljamain, when you see all these other guys, just because you're like, man, they could still be fighting for CFFC, right? Or it's just like, man, this guy was our champion and he could still have more fights for CFFC. Or you're like, you know what? No, this is exactly what we planned. This is what we want people to realize, that at right now, this is the next step for these guys.
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter. You know, I don't mean to disrespect anybody when I say this, but if Paul stayed in Cage Fury, I mean, you saw what he did to Castillo. He'd be hurting people on the local level. If I kept Aljamain Sterling in the Cage Fury, he would hurt people on the local level. So I'm glad they're world class athletes and they're fighting world class talent. So keeping them at the regional level would be a detrimental to them, and honestly, they would hurt people. I mean, Paul Felder, I couldn't get Paul a fight. Craig Johnson, Paul's last CFFC fight was against Craig Johnson. He was the only one that stepped up, and unfortunately, he got knocked out. And Craig's, he's a great guy, but we try to build stars. We're not the person that's trying to look for, and I don't mean to say this in a derogatory sense, but we're not looking for the latest UFC reject or the has-been. We're trying to build, the Paul Felders, the Aljamain Sterlings, the people that are the upcoming stars that can be the next star in the business.
No, that's great. I think, and I think the fighters that'll be listening to this, the managers that see this, that kind of want to know more about you and what you guys are about, will see that that's the truth. That you guys are definitely trying to build up fighters and that kind of thing. So, you made an interesting point about saying if you would have kept Paul Felder at the local level, he'd be knocking more guys out. He's knocking Danny Castillo out, who's a tough guy, an accomplished UFC fighter. And that was they're already talking about knockout of the year, and we're 5 days into the year. So that's pretty impressive. But what was it about Felder that you said, hey, man, this guy, what skill sets did you see in Felder to say, hey, here's somebody that I think could make waves at CFFC and even further?
Well, even when we, Paul made his pro debut with us, and he fought a really, really talented. I mean, he's such a great guy, but his record doesn't show it. But he fought Matumi Goodrum. I think he was a runner-up 3 times in the state of New Jersey for wrestling. And Paul basically, lost the first round. He was getting out hustled. In the second round, he just came out and just hit Matumi with a knee and a flying knee and knocked him out. And it was scary. And then you saw what he did to, his next couple of fights. And when I knew he kind of turned the corners when we put him up against Mark Stevens for the 55 title. Mark's probably got 3 times the amount of fight as he does. He's the ultimate fighter, veteran, and wealth of experience. And Paul, no disrespect to Mark, but Paul ran right through him, and we knew that right there he was going to get the shot. And then when he knocked out Craig with the spinning heel kick or whatever, it was, he got the call the next day.
So when you're looking at fighters that aren't Paul Felder, or when you're getting, and I know you get emails and text messages and probably like, oh, check out my YouTube highlight reel and that kind of thing. What are you looking for from these guys, from these fighters, to kind of say, hey, you know what? Here's somebody that we think is CFFC potential, but also CFFC potential and more. Like what are some of the skill sets, the tangibles, the intangibles, that kind of thing.
Well, obviously, on the local level, you want to build up relationships with, gyms in the area, certainly your gym, other gyms in the areas. Obviously, ticket sales are a great thing, but you have to be exciting. You have to want to. You want a fighter that's going to leave an impression on the crowd's mind that when they leave, the Borgata or Harris or Sands, that they remember. Wow, I'm going to see Paul Felder's next fight, or I'm going to see Anthony Terrell's next fight. They got to be exciting. You want a guy that's exciting, that's got a little bit of charisma, to him, is able to, self-promote themselves. We're always going to promote you no matter what, but it's great if you can promote themselves. But definitely you want to find someone who's really at the top of the level, how they performed in their last couple of fights. And, we want exciting people. We want, like I said, fighters that when the fans leave, they're going to remember them.
No, that's great for the up and coming fighters, and I get this phone call probably more than you do. It's like, I don't have any experience, but I'd like to fight, what's it going to take, or what that kind of thing. And I always talk to the person on the phone, be it male or female, you sure you really want to fight? Because it's about getting hit in the face and making people go ooh and ah, and that's either to your benefit or your detriment sometimes. And it's as you well know, your cage side for every single one of those fights, it's not easy stepping into that cage. But what's also isn't easy, when I talked about scumbag matchmakers and promoters, is dealing with scumbag fighters and scumbag managers. And I'm kidding, but what I'm saying is, how do you deal with fighters when they start to be difficult? Fighters who start to get a big head when they don't necessarily should have a big head, or managers that are expecting the world from you and be like, bro, we're a local show. We're not the UFC. We're not going to fly you in and all this other stuff. Like, how do you handle that and juggle and still keeping a good relationship with all the camps that you have a good relationship with?
Well, though, I think everyone appreciates honesty, and even when you're dealing with a
Well, I'll be honest with you right now. I think your smoke detector needs a new battery.
Yeah, I haven't changed it in a while. So if there's a fire, if you see smoke behind me, I got to get out. But I think honesty is really the best thing when you're talking to a fighter. I have fighters that are, under our contract, and they're 2-1, 3-1, and they're like, hey, when can I get the shot at the title? And you just kind of got to give them a reality check and just say, I don't think you're ready yet. Look at the record of our champion. Look at your record. You got to put a little bit more work in. You're always going to deal with people you don't like in the industry. It's just the nature of the business. There's some people that probably don't like me, and I can understand that. But at the end of the day, if it makes good for business, we'll get the deal done. But I think just being honest and just giving these fighters a reality check. Listen, if you think you can make more money fighting somewhere else, then do that. If you think you can get more exposure by fighting in a hotel, that they had a wedding at last night, then go for that. I would never try to stop a fighter, but I will always present them with what Cage Fury can do for you. We can keep you busy throughout the year. We can propel your career. We can promote you the way you want to be promoted. So, but there's going to be scumbags.
That's me saying that, not you. Just so everybody knows that.
There's going to be scumbags no matter where you go, and you just gotta, like I said, it's all about. You can be a scumbag and you can be professional. We don't have to like each other to get a deal done. But most of the people I deal with, I have a pretty good rapport and a pretty good relationship with. But there are some of those guys that fly-by-night promotions that are just trying to make a buck and don't care where they're having a show at. And I think they're a detriment to MMA.
Well, you already answered the question that I was going to ask next, is why should fighters fight for CFFC? But you kind of went through the laundry list 2 minutes ago why a fighter should fight for CFFC. So I'm not even going to bother asking that question. But when I just want to let the kind of people that will listen to this or watch this know, it's what I really appreciate about dealing with you is the fact that, can it get heated? Yes, most definitely. Like, I'll get mad or tell you, no, I don't like this, and you're like, no, this is back and forth. But at the end of the day, that's business, right? That's me protecting what I think I need to be protecting, you protecting what you think you need protecting. And then when we're done with that business, it's all cool in the gang, as they say after that. And that's what I like about dealing with you, is the fact that I can, quote unquote, curse you out and then see you 10 minutes later and it's all good, because you understand that the only reason why I'm getting mad at you is because I think I need to get mad at you to protect my fighter or help my fighter's cause, and vice versa. So I think sometimes more fighters, promoters, and managers need to take it less personal and just look, it's a business on both ends, Yeah,
you hit the nail on the head. I don't take anything personal. A manager, that's what a manager does. He tries to get the best deal for his fighter, just like you have to get the best deal for your fighter. You have to get the best fight for your fighter. I have to give what I think is the best fight for Cage Fury. I got to give what I think is the best fight for the fans. And I don't take anything personal. I've been cursed at, threatened. I don't take it personal. We can always, like I said, there's some people I wouldn't have a drink with 10 minutes later, and there's some people I definitely would. And I know they're just trying to do what's best for their person, and I'm trying to do what's best for my company. So.
No, that's great, and I think like what you had mentioned earlier, being upfront and honest with people, it's refreshing. So let's talk about where you kind of put the feather in your cap. You're the matchmaker, so the exciting fights are because of you for the most part, and the fighters, and the fights that are kind of clunkers are your fault as well. But let's not talk about the clunkers, right? Let's talk about what do you think is the best fight you've ever matched up under the CFFC banner?
So many.
I know, yeah, it's so tough when you have such a laundry list of great fights.
No, I mean, I'll take someone from years ago and someone recently.
Okay,
You were probably there for the first one, but when we matched up Timmy Williams versus Andre Guzmao,
yeah, I was there.
it was that had to be my favorite fight, just because Timmy was this not well known kid, coming from Millville, New Jersey, and Andre Guzmao was coming out of Renzo Gracie. I think he took John Jones to a decision, and everyone thought that this was going to be Andre's stepping stone back to the UFC. And then Timmy really it was a great fight, back and forth fight, and then Timmy put on him at the third, and I was real happy with that fight, and just real. I mean, the crowd couldn't have been better. The atmosphere was crazy. That had to be probably one of my favorite fights. And then secondly, the most recent two fights we had with Livan Makashvili and Popo Bezerra. I really enjoyed those two fights. And I hope we get to see a third one.
So when you let's go back in time a little bit. When you matched up Guzmao and Tim Williams, what made you think that it would be a competitive fight as opposed to like a one-sided victory from Guzmao?
Well, you got to look at. I heard. He obviously trains with a great camp. I know he's trained with you. I know he's trained with Balance. You see the people who he's beaten. He was undefeated at the time. Pretty much, he beat a real good people. I think he beat Ariel Sepulveda. He beat Dwayne Bastris. He beat a real good local guys, and I think he was ready for that next step. And there's sometimes you hear people from like you get the phone calls like, hey, I'm the next best thing. A lot of people told me how good Timmy was, and and they were from credible people, like yourself. And other people, but when people start telling you that this kid's really really good, and they hate to train with him, and you gotta start at some point. You gotta start believing the hype, and we believed it, and he lived up to it.
Nice, and that's awesome. I mean, thankfully he got the win, and that was, for us as the people that were around him at the time, it's kind of, it's always foot on the gas pedal, but you're like, wow, this is Andre Guzmao. This guy's, this is a big step up. So it was good to see. It was good to see Timmy step up when it was time to step up. Now going to the Popo Makashvili fights. Now you hang your hat on those. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see either of them. So I don't have firsthand knowledge of them, but because I think I had other fighters going on and stuff, it was in the back. So don't shake your head. What do you think, from your point of view as a matchmaker, but also a fan? What made those fights so good and exciting?
What makes those two fights exciting, because I kind of feel bad that they actually fought for us, because I think that fight could have been in the UFC easily. I would put Livan could fight in the UFC right now at 145 and do great. Popo could do 145 and do great. I think he's 17. Popo's 17-4, and his two losses are split decisions. His one loss was he got submitted early, like 5 years ago, to a top 10 UFC lightweight. His name escapes me right now, but and Livan will fight anybody. He was undefeated. He beat Scott Heckman. Before that, he stopped Scott Heckman, and his loss to Popo was a decision loss, and they wanted to rematch, and the rematch occurred. It was just a great fight. Like, that fight could have been in the UFC. It could have been on any UFC card. They're just both are really really world class athletes.
Well, it was in the back, because I believe Tim Williams was fighting when Makashvili and Popo fought the first time, and you could just see how and that was the one that Makashvili lost, but he was intense and ready to go, and was looked it looked like a beast back there, and kind of, I could say, like, yeah, I could see why this guy has the title right now. But now, moving away from fights that you've kind of brought together as a fan, but also using not the glasses you have on now, but the glasses that you wear when you're matching fights. What are some of the, or at least one or two of the best fights you've ever seen where you're like, man, that was amazing. That fight really surprised me. I didn't think it was going to be this good, or that you know what? That fight lived up to the hype. Whoever made that match really did a good job.
Well, I like fights that, I actually see like live instead of on the TV, because it's just so much more, it's so much more energy when you see a fight live. The one fight that does stick out in my mind, just because of how badly he got booed and how the other guy got cheered, was Forrest Griffin versus Anderson Silva in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I think it was Anderson's second fight at 205, and I think a lot of people picked him to win, but they weren't sure how Forrest was going to do with the size advantage. And when he got booed, he really got booed coming out for that fight. And Forrest Griffin was heavily, he's a fan favorite. He got cheered, and just the way Anderson Silva just picked him apart was the thing of beauty. I mean, I thought it was great matchmaking, because it showed you that Anderson could fight at 205 at a different level and still take on, at the time, I think he was on a decline, but he was still considered, a really good fighter at Forrest Griffin. So I think that was a really good fight.
Well, not an easy fight for anybody at 205, Anderson Silva or anybody else. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're being, Forrest Griffin at one point was the 205 champ. So regardless of what point of his career you're beating him, you're still beating someone that held the title for at least a minimal amount of time. All right. So Forrest Griffin, Anderson Silva was a fight that you were really impressed with. The secret question that I didn't tell you about earlier, and it's fighting related.
Uh-oh.
Pacquiao versus Mayweather. If you follow Arias on Facebook or whatever social media on, I thought he was Puerto Rican, but obviously he's Filipino, right? And anybody that comes from the Philippines, I'm sorry,
yes,
they live and die with Manny Pacquiao. So, number one, do you think the fight's going to happen? And number two, who do you think would win? As I roll my eyes.
I don't think the fight will ever happen. I just don't think that the two will get on the same page. It's, Manny signed to HBO, Mayweather signed to Showtime, so you got to get that big obstacle out the way. Who's going to promote the fight? Then you got to talk about money. Who's going to get, obviously Floyd's going to get at least 60%, which I agree with. His pay-per-view numbers don't lie.
40% of Floyd's pay-per-view numbers are not bad. Somebody should
I know, and I think Manny's accepted that. I think Manny's accepted, the drug test that he was scared to do back in the day. He's got over that fear, so he'll do the drug test. I think Mayweather wants him to sign with Money Productions or Money Promotions, which will never happen. So I just think there's too many obstacles, and I think they're just. I'm a Manny fan, but I'm not a blind Manny fan. I think it's both of their parts. I think they're both at fault for this. I think Bob Arum's a huge stepping block that's blocked this fight for years. I think without Bob Arum, this fight could have happened a couple years ago, but. I think who I think would win the fight.
Yeah. Come on.
Obviously, I think Pacquiao win the fight. I mean,
so what does Pacquiao bring to the table differently than Canelo Alvarez? Who the laundry list of guys that we all hoped, or some of us hoped, at a certain point would beat Mayweather, just to kind of say that somebody finally beat Mayweather. What does Pacquiao bring to the table that these other guys don't?
Good. I'm glad you brought that up, and I wish we were in a room with Mayweather supporters. First of all, Floyd has never fought anyone as fast as Manny, and he's never fought anyone with the strength as Manny. If you watch the first Maidana versus Mayweather fight, and you watch round one, which Maidana should have won, I haven't looked at the scorecards of the thing, but he out-threw Mayweather, he outlanded Mayweather, and he bullied Mayweather. Picture that 12 rounds, because that's what Manny will do. Manny does not stop. He's the Energizer. He's the Energizer bunny. He will throw punches and punches, and he will not stop for 12 rounds. You've seen other fighters, they get tired, they quit. Mosley had a great first 3 rounds, almost knocked Mayweather down in the second round, and after that he stopped fighting. Manny will put pressure on you for 12 rounds, and he will steal rounds just because of his activity. He may hit Manny a couple times, but Manny will keep throwing a volume of punches, and he'll steal rounds, and he'll win by decision. Floyd doesn't have the power to knock him out, nor will he engage.
All right. So you probably didn't hear it here first. If you follow Arias on social media, he is a huge Pacquiao fan, but rightfully so. I mean, Pacquiao's an amazing fighter, and also he's your Filipino brethren, so I guess you got that going for you.
He's the only person in the fight business that I would actually get starstruck. There's no one like in the UFC or that I would get starstruck, but if I met him, it would be like, oh.
And he'd be like, "Oh my God, you're the matchmaker for CFFC."
Yeah, I think he actually does have ownership in one FC in Asia. So.
Oh, nice, cool. So let's wrap this up. Arias, I appreciate you being on. I know we were trying to make this happen a while ago, but for some reason your computer wasn't working. But now that your daughter Serena let you use her computer, we got it to work. What do you guys have coming up? And I'll put any of the stuff in the description and that kind of thing. What are the next 2 events for you guys?
Well, February 7th, we're going to be back at the Borgata in Atlantic City, New Jersey. We're going to have in the co-main event. We're going to have Lyman Good fight Elijah Harshberger. I can't say his last name.
Okay.
I think he's the current Ring of Combat champion. They're going to fight for the interim title.
Yeah, and Lyman Good is coming off, unfortunately for him, a very impressive fight that did not get him a victory because of what was it? It was a no contest. Is that correct?
It was a no contest, and you gotta love the New Jersey Commission. It was the first time they, with Larry Hadrid coming back, was the first time they used instant replay for an MMA event in the last couple of years, and they went to instant replay and they determined that the eye poke, there was an eye poke and it was an unintentional foul. It started at round 3, so if the round 3 would have ended, they would have went to the scorecards. But since they didn't complete 3 full rounds, it was a no contest.
All right, but I mean, it was definitely an impressive fight for Lyman. What I will say this, and I know I said it was the last question. Jonathan Webb impressed the hell out of me in that fight. From a standpoint of that kid did not give up. He did not go away. There were plenty of times as I'm watching it on Go Fight Live that I was like, all right, this is where he's going to give up. This is where he's going to give up. So, give that kid props. But go ahead. You said that was the co-main event for your next event, and what's the main event?
Yeah, and just real quick going back, and as you say, I have the privilege of sitting ringside for all the fights, and when Lyman hit him with a high kick and he started to ground and pound him, John said out loud several times, "I'm fine, I'm fine," and the referee could hear him. So yeah, Jonathan's got a ton of heart. He's a really good guy, and it was unfortunate for Lyman, but we're probably going to see that. If Lyman gets by Elijah, we'll probably see that the rematch in May.
Okay, and what's the main event of that card on February 7th?
The main event is going to be Darryl Horker, who I believe is 10-1, and he's going to be fighting Jordan Steiner, who I think is 9-1. They're going to be fighting for the vacant lightweight title that Paul Felder left. I think that's going to be a great fight.
Okay, and then the event following that is
February 28th. We're going to be back at the Harris in Chester, Pennsylvania, and your good buddy Timmy Williams will be headlining that fight.
Nice. All right. Well, as you can see, people, if you follow CFFC, you get to go to the Borgata, you get to go to Harrah's, you get to go to, like you said, you're not going to the hall that just had a wedding. You're going to, multi-million-dollar casino event arenas that are designed to handle and have accommodations for food and stuff to do before and after the fight. So there's another reason why the fans like going to CFFC. Arias, once again, thank you so much for being on. Any sponsors or anybody you'd like to thank before we sign off?
I have no sponsors.
No, you're not sponsored by, Eveready or Duracell, maybe?
I used to be sponsored by Manto. I think that's what. But after I got submitted in like 5 seconds for every one of my fights, I think they dropped me.
Nice.
But I do have a question for you.
Go ahead. I might have to edit this out.
It's all right. Do you remember the time I brought Megumi Fuji down
Yes,
to your
Megumi
gym?
Fuji, Hiroki Abe, and those two other
Oh, I
Japanese.
love them.
Yeah, yeah, I remember. I talk about that all the time. I talk about how I submitted Megumi Fuji.
Yeah, well, she's a
I'm
135
kidding.
pound girl.
No, no. But I tell people that I train with her, and that was a really cool, fun experience. That was when you were connected to Miguel.
Yes, sir.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco. Wish you luck.
Same here.